Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
That's a wow. Joining me now, Richard Painter, White House ethics chief under President George W. Bush, whose watchdog group is suing the president, and Hugh Hewitt, host of the radio show Hugh Hewitt Show, and the host of MSNBC's Hugh Hewitt Saturdays at 8 a.m. Mr. Painter, to you first. We have talked a number of times saying this is unprecedented, this is unethical, we can't believe they're doing this. But now it's Chris Christie attacking Trump and or his cabinet's ethics. Does this signal some sort of shift?
Well, I don't know that it's a shift. We've all known that this administration ignores ethics, ignores the laws.
But Chris Christie, that's a different voice.
Well, it is. And I think we're finding Republicans, supporters of President Trump, one by one, starting to realize that this administration is corrupt and has been corrupt from day one. And our lawsuit is about foreign government money that has been going to the president in violation of the United States Constitution. We have the incidents involving cabinet members getting money and favors from lobbyists. We just today had the United States making statements that were false, probably knowingly false, about Amazon driving the stock price down. If an investor lost money on that stock, that investor could sue him for securities fraud, and those investors ought to be calling a lawyer. It's every day we have a new violation of either the Constitution, the federal statutes, or the ethics regulations. It's over and over again. And yes, I think people like Chris Christie are finally getting fed up, and the voters are getting fed up. I've been fed up with this president ever since he was a candidate, and it was very clear he was going to violate the law if he won the election, and that's what we've had nonstop.
One of the things, Chris Christie there was talking Scott Pruitt and this apartment he rented down in Washington. Hugh, you and I have spoke via Twitter on this, and you're saying it's much ado about nothing. Why?
Well, let me begin by saying Scott Pruitt is a very old friend of mine, and I've had him on my show a dozen times. And my son works at EPA, so I want to be very transparent. But I've been the designated agency ethics officer at two agencies. Like Professor Painter, I worked in the White House counsel's office as well. And the key opinion here is that of Kevin Manoli. He's the principal deputy attorney general at EPA. He's also the designated agency ethics officer. He's a lifer. He's been there since 2000. Gina McCarthy, President Obama's administrator, made him the principal deputy associate attorney general at EPA. And Mr. Manoli reviewed the lease and upheld it. It is not in any way, shape, or form a gift. It's much ado about nothing. I think this is really about policy, Stephanie, as we talked about on Twitter. And I think it's about the Vacancy Act. Specifically, people on the left are upset with Scott Pruitt over the Clean Power Plan, which he repealed, the Waters of the United States, which he repealed, the CAFE standards today, which he put up for repeal. He's executing Donald Trump's policy on regulatory rollback, and they want him out. They're also afraid that if for any reason Attorney General Sessions leaves the Attorney Generalship, under the Vacancy Act, Scott Pruitt is eligible for up to 210 days to serve as Attorney General, and even beyond,
Hugh,
depending on circumstances.
There are ethics issues and self-dealing issues that go far beyond Scott Pruitt. So let's go back to the New York Magazine cover, where Jonathan Chait writes, "To be out for yourself is probably the single most disqualifying flaw a politician can have." Do you, Hugh Hewitt, who has a much longer history around politics than I do you have ethics concerns with President Trump or his administration when it comes to self-dealing?
Yes, always. As I said, I served as an ethics officer for 2 agencies, and I'm aware of Professor Painter's 180 different complaints against the agencies across the government. But in every case, Stephanie, it's a fact and circumstances inquiry. I think every single case against Scott Pruitt has been a nagging political attack to slow down the agenda.
Okay, then let's go broader than Scott Pruitt. We can go Jared Kushner. We can go President Trump.
Can you find me...
Richard?
Find me a hotel room for $50 a night in Washington, D.C., and tell me that's not a gift from a lobbyist. This is disgusting, and no decent ethics lawyer would sign off on that. If that had happened in the Bush administration, I would have shut it down in a minute. $50 a night to get a room in Washington, D.C. You know, we all know that that is a violation of the gift rules, and no ethics lawyer could cover that up. It's just flat out wrong. And you know it.
Well, I would say that, Mr. Painter, I don't know Mr. Manoli, and I don't know you, but I wouldn't slander a career professional who's been there for 18 years.
I will.
And
no
was
career professional would ever sign off on that. $50 a night in Washington, D.C.
He did.
Give me a break.
So you're
That's
manifestly wrong. But by all means, 180 complaints against the administration. By all
180 complaints.
Okay,
Get
then I
me
ask you
for $50 a night in Washington.
Hugh Hewitt, when was the last time you stayed in Washington, D.C.?
A month ago in my own home, which, by the way, I have often given to friends, but Mr. Pruitt could not use it because of the gift rules. That's one of the funny things about this, Stephanie. When you've got friends in Washington, you come to town for 5 months and your wife is at home with the last 5 months of your son finishing high school, you can't stay at a friend's house because of the gifts rules. Despite Mr. Painter's passion, which is misplaced.
Hugh, you cannot stay at a lobbyist's house when you're the EPA chief and your work could directly impact theirs.
John Boehner stayed at a lobbyist's house, rented it from him for 10 years as majority leader of the House. It goes to whether or not it's a gift. And by the way, it's not owned by Stephen Hart, who's been a friend of mine, again, transparency for 25 years.
You don't think $50 a night is a gift? You don't think $50 a night is a gift? How much do you think hotel rooms cost in Washington?
All I'm telling you is it was reviewed by the career deputy senior associate general and the ethics official at the agency, for whom I have no knowledge but great deal of respect. Mr. Painter doesn't. He's entitled to pass judgment on whomever he wants, but there's a reason he's in Minnesota, not in Washington, D.C. And that reason goes back to whether or not you have due regard for other professionals' work. I do. I have heard only good things about Mr.
I am
Manoli.
fed up with people being attacked in Minnesota,
I'm sure you are.
in my state. We elect people in Washington, D.C. We are sick and tired of K Street lobbyists who look down on us in Minnesota and say, well, this is the reason you're in Minnesota, instead of raking in money in Washington, D.C. on K Street and leasing out a room for $50 a night to the EPA administrator. This is corruption. This is why the people of Minnesota and every other state here in flyover country where you want to look down at us, we are going to vote these people out. It's disgusting what you just said about people in Minnesota, that somehow we are here because we don't play by your rules in Washington, D.C. We're going to shut it down. We're going to drain the swamp for sure.
It is Tuesday, the 3rd of April of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder. Tuesdays, we got a little bit of hot paprika going on. Oh, my, oh, my, oh, my. Well, all sorts of news happened overnight that I'm not able to get to. I'm sorry. I try my best. I try. But we can only do so much. It is so disconcerting, I have to say. Trump is continuing to go after Jeff Bezos. Amazon and the Washington Post. You know, I have a lot of issues with Jeff Bezos, I gotta say. The guy from My Pillow is trying to sidle up to Trump too, and you would expect a guy from, you know, like the My Pillow guy, who was convicted for massive cocaine distribution, spent some time in jail, and whose company repeatedly gets sued for all sorts of issues. That is the perfect person for this administration, isn't it? Well, I should be transparent here. I hate you, Hewitt. And as I like to say, who wouldn't hate you? Well, and let's also be transparent. Richard Painter is running to take Al Franken's old seat. So I guess we would have to thank Stephanie Ruhle for giving Painter a forum in which to, express his concerns. And I have to say, as a candidate, too, because you did disrespect flyover country. And calling it flyover country is disrespecting it on his face. But there you go. And so the more important point to be made about this kerfuffle between Painter and Hugh Hewitt is that it was two Republicans, okay? Two Republicans duking it out. And Hugh Hewitt, well, you know, when you look at the picture at the Overlook Hotel, you know, all those different New Year's Eve parties all through the years, decades and decades and decades, and the same evil personified by the Jack Nicholson character, Jack. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That same evil personified by Jack Nicholson is there, and I think that if you look at some of the other people in those pictures, you'll see, yep, the same people in the Trump administration who are also the same people that were in the Nixon administration. And I bet Roger Stone was around during Teapot Dome scandal. I mean, look at the guy. This guy is the living dead. Look at him. All right. What do we have coming up here on the rest of the show? I've riffed long enough. I mean, that was quite a long clip with Painter and Hugh Hewitt. So for the rest of the menu here at the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan holds town halls in Texas, but he won't face his own constituents in Wisconsin. Of course. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke has reassigned a third of the department's Native American staffers to shut them up. Well, Zinke's a cowboy. He likes to ride around with his cowboy hat. And he don't like them Injuns. No siree. Oh, and in an effort to speed up deportations, immigration judges face an unprecedented quota of 700 cases adjudicated per year, or Jeff Sessions won't give them a satisfactory rating in which they can then keep their jobs. Don't see a conflict there at all, do we? And why is Jeff Sessions not in jail for committing perjury? Now it looks like 3 or more times in front of Congress. After the break, we'll move to the chef's table, where a Republican Alabama state lawmaker, a former chairman of the Alabama Republican Party, and a healthcare executive were all hauled off to jail immediately following a corruption investigation. Now, this is Alabama. And what the hell happened to Don Siegelman? What? Okay. And facing $5,000 fines and removal from office if they attempt to enact any kind of gun regulation, 10 Florida mayors sue for their right to implement stricter gun laws. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. The bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the chat room link on the right, and on the left are the contribute donate buttons. And thank you for your generosity on those donate contribute buttons. We pay our bills with that, and we are unable to do it without you, so thank you. And if you have any concerns, questions, requests, etc., do contact us through the chat room link there. Kelly Lincoln, our roaring girl, monitors that. And join us and follow us on Twitter at Netroots Radio. That would be nice. We have a Facebook presence if you want to do that. And follow me at Justice Putnam. And also check out my diary on Daily Kos for show notes and links and other items of entertainment. Okay. So, wait a second. I just got a script here from Sinclair Broadcasting that they want me to read, but they don't own us, and we would never do that. And, screw Sinclair Broadcasting. I think that they should be registered as a foreign agent. There's some question whether Paul Ryan is long for this form of government work that he's been doing. We will see. Tommy Christopher from Share Blue Media penned this piece. Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan is afraid to face his own constituents in Wisconsin, so instead he spent the Easter recess, or is spending the Easter recess, doing private events 1,200 miles away. While Democrats held town halls in their own districts across the country, the Republican leader had planned a busy week in Texas. Yesterday, Ryan was holding an employee-only event at Southwest Airlines. Then at their headquarters in Dallas, that event is similar to the tightly controlled corporate photo ops Ryan has held in Wisconsin. Then today, Ryan will hold a private town hall in Fort Worth, Texas. Wow. But he's from Wisconsin. Ryan has not held a public town hall in his district for more than 2.5 years. This is actually very common when the majority takes these chairmanships. And it's even more pronounced when you become, Speaker of the House. You forget from where you came from and who brought you there. Or is it who brung you there? There you go. Who brung you there? It took me a long time to get rid of that kind of lingo. I almost forgot it. So, but this is a common behavior among representatives or senators, that they get put in positions of leadership, and there's a lot of work and a lot of concern to be done on the federal level because it's also international. Many concerns, and you forget who voted for you, because now it's easy to forget about the actual votes because what counts is the money. And Paul Ryan is awash in money. So he doesn't need to talk to the little people. That's just, that's window dressing anyway. He didn't get his power from the people voting. Let's be clear. Representative Democratic republics represent a particular kind of citizen, and we used to think of them as amorphous entities that did not have flesh and blood, except for the people that were working within the confines and walls of that corporation. So, but when he has shown up in his district, it's always been canned events, like alluded to, at these tightly controlled corporate meetups, when he is in his state. But he's not going to talk to the little guy. No. He's got to talk to those wheelers and dealers in Wisconsin who seem to be of a particularly extreme right-wing ilk, and they got lots of money. They give it to Scott Walker, and he thanks him, and he waves at him and says, "Thank you," at public events. So, but voters are making themselves heard as best they can. And, of course, you got Randy Bryce running, the Iron Stash. So we'll see if the little guy can actually break through to the people who got the money. Because, money doesn't talk. It swears. Next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is a article also out of Share Blue Media, this time by Matthew Chapman. It brings up an infuriating reminder of how a common behavior trait that Ryan Zinke, the Interior Secretary, exemplifies of the West. And you still see it now. Sometimes not as blatant. Sometimes it can be very subtle. But it can also be as blatant as signs that are in still some businesses, Indians not allowed. Yeah. Because, free market stuff, I think. But Zinke's record, he has an appalling record of disrespecting Native Americans, and it looks like it's at least got much worse. I don't think it's gotten worse. It's just that it's being reported, because for those of us out west, this is not a surprising development. So, Zinke's management of the Department of the Interior has been horrible for Native Americans. Now it seems Zinke may have a chilling strategy to silence criticism within his own department, reassigning the Native Americans working there. It's like a whitewash of sorts. According to a report from Talking Points Memo, Zinke transferred more than 30% of senior officials with a tribal affiliation, even though Native Americans make up less than 10% of the department's workforce. Well, look, when you take over the government, you kind of want people around you that look like you, and not only look like you, but are loyal. And if you're a cowboy that has been on the side of massacres, the descendants of those ancestors of theirs are just looking at you like they want your scalp. You just know it. Which explains Scott Pruitt's need to have the big security detail. You never know when somebody might have taken exception to the fact that he was responsible for, their child dying because of being poisoned. Another thing about Zinke that always cracks me up, he flies flags wherever he is. Like at the Department of the Interior, when he's in D.C., they fly a flag that says he's in town. And apparently it's gotten so complex, like if he's gone to lunch, there's a flag for it. If he's overseas, there's a flag. Overseas doing at a particular place or doing a particular thing, there's a flag. I don't know. It is something that was done in the wild frontier. You think it's just a maritime thing? No. It's out in the wild frontier at all those forts. And why did we have all those forts? Well, we wanted to expand west, didn't we? And how do you expand west if there's some people in the way? Well, one way to do it is to send some scouts ahead. And, sell them a few guns, get them liquored up. While they're liquored up, maybe get them to attack a few settlers that are out there. few settlers get attacked by some liquored up Indians with guns all of a sudden. And what do you need? You need a fort. Build a fort. Send some scouts in front of that fort. Rile up the indigenous population. Give them weapons. Get them to attack some settlers. Build a fort. Leapfrog across the continent. Zinke liked that strategy. So you certainly don't want ancestors of those people in your own office. They're looking at you like, yeah, the knives are drawn. Okay. So, but he's also knows that what he's doing to their homes. Even though this is the other thing. Let's give these people the worst land available. And then they find out the worst land available has some value. And now they want it. And those, I don't know, pests need to be scourged. So they want coal. He wants coal. He wants uranium. And he's going to get it. So he lifted a moratorium on permits for coal extraction on public lands without consulting local tribes who promptly sued. Retaliating against Native Americans who opposed or might oppose this decision would not be out of character for Zinke. Last week, Interior officials revealed that he flatly said in a recent speech to his staff, "I don't care about diversity." And I really don't think it's that important anymore. Well, it never was to him. Diversity was, I don't know, another obstacle put in his way to get what he wants. Here in the Bistro Cafe, a West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article by Elizabeth Preza out of Raw Story. There is a much longer Washington Post piece that this is gleaned from, and I'll try to get that link up. But do go and read the much longer piece. It's does go quite in depth about what Sessions is doing. And what he's doing is that they want to speed up deportations, but it's also another way of distraction from, we know what's going on. And if you can demagogue and scapegoat a bunch of brown people in the process, that's an old, tried and true racist strategy. And it worked very well when Jeff Sessions was just but a mere lad, learning the ways of the world. Well, the Trump administration is imposing a quota on federal immigration judges. And the quota system is billed as a way to clear a backlog of more than 600,000 cases pending before the Executive Office of Immigration Review, and as a part of Sessions' pledge to tighten immigration laws. So judges will now have to clear 700 cases per year to receive a satisfactory rating on their annual performance reviews, which gives them raises or they lose a job. Now, a union representing the federal immigration judges described the move as unprecedented, indeed, because think of the conflicts of interests here. To get that satisfactory rating, they just got to move people through in spite of how long the law takes to be able to determine justice. I suggest that we look at the judiciary branch maybe as like baseball. There's no time clock. The inning is over when it gets over. I know they're trying to put a time clock to make sure that, there's not so much wasted time between pitches and how many times the batter steps out of the batter's box to adjust all the Velcro they wear now. My God. But, look, determining justice isn't on a time clock. But Jeff Sessions is unmitigated, unrepentant, bigot, racist, and he ought to be in jail for, perjuring a number of times in front of Congress. Let's get to our break, and we'll come back and go through weather from around the world, and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, why is it so hard to make a good Tomb Raider movie? Is it the star? Nah, they usually do the best with what they're handed, and Alicia Vikander has been great, is great, and probably will be great again. Is it the need to reproduce the gameplay of the video game? I hope not. Those sequences were some of the film's more watchable moments. Is the genre itself played out? Not for me. I love a good adventuring archaeologist crypt dive. So what is it? Is it the slew of tired action movie tropes that we never need to see again? Like the opening action sequence that neither forwards the plot nor reveals character? Like the heroine and the bad guy getting the drop on each other and, against motivation, talking instead of taking the other one out, especially after the villain has shown us how ruthless he is by thoughtlessly killing anonymous captives, anonymous henchmen, whomever. Like the heroine caving into, "Stop, I have a hostage." Like the heroine agreeing to follow the villain's agenda just so we can see her pursue the movie's main quest. Like a boring and poorly examined quest object. In essence, these stories are treasure hunts. To care about the movie, we have to care about the treasure. Like an imbalance between a realistic grittiness and the action melodrama that is the movie's core. Like anything having to do with finding, understanding, living up to, or avenging your dad. I swear there must be a production assistant and 2 mob enforcers in every Hollywood script meeting saying, "You know what we could use here? A father figure, or a straight-out father. And hey, you know what we can have then? Some daddy issues." Could continually serving up tired old tropes that we've outgrown be why it's so hard to rock Lara Croft on screen? I don't know. But break out your ancient maps, your hidden codes, and your buried temples, because I know there's a good Tomb Raider out there, somewhere. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky.
Yeah, photosynthesis is surprisingly inefficient, only of the order of 1 to 2%, and one of the main culprits is an enzyme called rubisco.
Laura Barter, a biological chemist at Imperial College London. Scientific American editor-in-chief Mariette DiChristina recorded these comments when they chatted at the recent World Economic Forum in Davos. That enzyme rubisco? Because it's vital for the first major step in photosynthesis, it's probably the most abundant enzyme on the planet, and it's worked fine for a very long time. But for our needs, we humans want it to work better.
And I'm very interested in trying to improve upon this enzyme because it's both slow and it also suffers from a lack of specificity. And when it can catalyze a reaction with carbon dioxide that you want, but also a competing reaction with oxygen. And so we're looking at ways that we can enhance the local concentration of carbon dioxide around rubisco to increase its efficiency and ultimately increase crop yield.
Barter explained how she's trying to do that at a talk she gave at the forum.
There are a suite of enzymes that are involved in the capture and release of carbon dioxide, and we're synthesizing some molecules that can mimic this behavior. with the hope that they can be sprayed on crops much in the same way as a fertilizer and will be taken up by the plant and will increase the concentration of carbon dioxide around rubisco inside the plant and increase its activity and photosynthetic yields. Now, we have already synthesized this suite of molecules and have shown that they can capture and release carbon dioxide, and we're testing their effect on rubisco that's been extracted from plants and seeing really, really exciting results.
For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. James Madison's strong belief in religious freedom is evident in his drafting of the U.S. Bill of Rights. He had originally opposed adding a Bill of Rights to the Constitution because he doubted the effectiveness of mere paper barriers to tyranny, and because he did not see a need for such formal guarantees in a government limited to enumerated powers. He had promised his Baptist friends and others, however, that he would work for the addition of a Bill of Rights if the Constitution were adopted. He also became convinced that a formal Declaration of Rights would widen support for the new Constitution and would help the nation's courts protect the rights of minorities against majority encroachments. Almost single-handedly, Madison worked through the summer of 1789 to draft and secure agreement on the measure, overcoming the apathy and skepticism of congressional colleagues and working out an acceptable draft from among many proposals required all of Madison's political skills. Though many among the framers could claim to have had a hand in fathering the Constitution, the Bill of Rights was primarily Madison's offspring. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on April 2nd, 2018. I'm Mark Boulanger.
Collaboration.
Understanding. Stability.
Mutual understanding and bonding.
Yonjibu Shibu.
Co-create.
Teamwork.
One of the most effective tools unions are using to protect workers in multinational corporations are global framework agreements. GFAs, as the agreements are known, are negotiated at the world level between corporations and the global unions with input from local unions. They do not replace local union collective bargaining. Instead, the agreements bind the corporations to international labor standards, such as those set by the UN's International Labor Organization, the ILO. Respect for the right to organize and collective bargaining is at the center of all global framework agreements. Most GFAs establish a national monitoring committee to suggest how the agreement can best be implemented in a country. Training for the workers who sit on the committee, the NMC, is a crucial activity of the Global Union. Recently, the Global Union Industrial held a workshop to train workers who are on the National Monitoring Committee for H&M, the Swedish multinational clothing retail company. The participants in the workshop prepared a report on their activities in countries such as Bangladesh, Cambodia, Indonesia, Myanmar, and Turkey. Here are some of the participant reports, starting with the National Monitoring Committee from Bangladesh.
Hello, our NMC work was mainly focused in solving the dispute cases that come from 13 factories, including the significant case that arise from Ashulia unrest. In that case, we had employment settlement for 984 workers, as well as we got the criminal charges dropped against those workers. Now we are in continuous engagement with the H&M suppliers.
In Cambodia, the MNC has focused on building trust and good relationships between 10 industrial-affiliated unions and H&M suppliers.
នៅក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជារួមជាមួយនឹងអ្នកផ្គត់ផ្គង់ផងដែរ
And lastly, between our suppliers and NMC members, we did this through raising awareness with the suppliers about who were the NMC and how it could support them, and also inviting NMC members to H&M supplier meetings on, for example, short-term contracts. This was to build a better understanding of the different perspectives.
The committee from Turkey reported on its activities with H&M, but also other companies such as Inditex, a Spanish clothing multinational.
I would like to mention about 3 important activities that we conducted in 2017. 1. Supplier, union affiliates, and union members were trained on Global Framework Agreement. 2. Collaboration with Inditex and Industrial on Workplace Dialogue Project. We accompanied worker representatives election at 18 units. Worker representatives, middle management and top management were trained on worker basic rights and communication. 3. ILO social dialogue seminar with the participants of Inditex, Chibo, and H&M suppliers and Industrial. We emphasized the social dialogue, importance of social dialogue and freedom of association.
Mats Svensson is the international secretary of EF Metall in Sweden, where H&M is headquartered.
So, we are very proud that after years of discussions, having agreed on a global framework agreement between H&M, Industrial Global and EF Metall. The Global Framework Agreement has created a platform for constructive and productive cooperation when it comes to improvement of working conditions in the H&M supply chain through well-functioning industrial relations.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Follow us on Twitter @Radio Labor. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. China has slapped new import tariffs on a host of U.S. products, fulfilling a threat issued by Beijing last month. China will target 128 U.S.-made products, including a range of fruits, nuts, wines, and meat products, with either 15% or 25% tariffs. That move is being described by Chinese state media as a countermeasure after the Trump administration imposed wide-reaching tariffs on aluminum and steel products. The total value of the Chinese tariffs is estimated to be around $3 billion annually. That's a far cry from expected tariffs to be unveiled by the Trump administration this week, which could total between $50 billion and $60 billion of products each year. The Israeli government has reached a deal with the United Nations and several Western countries to resettle some 16,000 migrants from Africa who were previously threatened with deportation or resettlement to Rwanda. The vast majority of the predominantly male migrants in Israel fled conflict in Sudan or political repression in Eritrea. Under a new plan announced on Monday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said migrants would be sent to countries like Canada, Germany, or Italy. And Malaysia has passed a new law criminalizing fake news, spelling out punishments of up to 6 years in jail or fines of nearly $125,000 for news reports that are, quote, wholly or partly false. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, which has criticized the bill, said the legislation is likely to chill reporting on corruption allegations against Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak. In a statement, the EFF called the Malaysian law, quote, another reminder of the insidious malleability of the concept of fake news, which has become a term often used to refer to news that is critical of those in power rather than news that is deliberately false. Luke Vargas, New York.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Well, it's Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The secret is hot Hungarian paprika. All right. Not too much, but not too little either. Okay, weather around the world. Well, we always like to begin along the banks of the Rogue River. In the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, it's currently 27 degrees, though here at the mothership, I'm registering more like 34, which is still cold. We had a freeze warning last night right after I planted a couple of roses, got some vegetables started, and in some pots, and oh my God. So, we'll see. Hopefully it wasn't enough of a killing cold. Though we're expected to be a bit warmer today, a high of around 67. Though we did get into the low 70s yesterday, and I believe we'll be into the mid 70s today. Hopefully not as bitterly cold tomorrow night or tonight as it was last night. Expecting a low of about 48 to 50, and that seems right. Tomorrow we'll be in the mid-70s, and it looks like we'll hover around that for a few days, though we are expected to have rain showers beginning Thursday, Friday, and go on for days on end. And when you live in a rainforest and you haven't been getting rain, you like the rain. At least we do. Oh, I had air quality data for just a moment ago, and it was at 26 parts per million, which was considered good, but now I'm getting no data. Pressure is holding steady at 30.05 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles. Humidity is 81%. Winds are out of the southwest at a negligible 3 miles an hour, and they will be then coming out of the northwest later on this morning to 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then staying steady out of the northwest tonight at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Of course, we'll have our afternoon gust. I always like that. Okay, so I guess we're ready for the rest of the world. And weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. And these people planted these personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people live around the world. Okay, London is 57 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 59 and cloudy. Rome is 66 and sunny, though both Paris and Rome are under lightning and thunder activity that could knock out critical infrastructure, like electricity. Kiev is 54 and fair. Kabul is 65 with thunder. And I guess they would have lightning, too. You can't have thunder without lightning. Hong Kong is 69 and clear. Tokyo is 63 and clear. Sydney, Australia, 70 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California, 49 degrees and fair. And New York is 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Cloudy. And you're under a gale watch. Okay? It looks to me like you're under a gale watch with rain. That's New York. Okay, it's spring. April showers bring May flowers, let's hope. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. First offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is a bit of good news brought to us by Brad Reed out of Raw Story. Now, I would like to juxtapose this good news story with the continuing bad news about Don Siegelman, who, though he was released in 2017 for an onerous conviction, that revolved around bribery, in which no money was exchanged and no extension of influence. Prosecutorial misconduct, judicial review, 100 judges and prosecutors petitioned to have his whole case overturned, and it never happened, and he's on supervised probation today. But a Republican Alabama state lawmaker, Representative Jack Williams, former Alabama GOP Chairman Marty Connors were arrested and brought to the U.S. Marshals Holding Unit at the federal courthouse in Montgomery, Alabama yesterday. According to federal officials, Williams and Connors both took part in a bribery scheme hatched by G. Ford Gilbert, the owner of California-based Trina Health, a company that runs diabetes treatment clinics throughout the United States, and I think they got a lot of diabetes in Alabama. Shortly after Gilbert's company opened up facilities in Alabama, the state's largest insurer, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama, said that it would not cover its treatments. The government alleges that Gilbert then lobbied to push a bill through the Alabama state legislature that would force Blue Cross to cover his company's treatments, and he directly paid State of Alabama House Majority Leader Mickey Hammond in exchange for pushing the bill. Well, this is just running government like a business, isn't it? And everyone knows a little bit of money greases the engines. It used to be that bribes were illegal, even, in a business setting. Used to be. Well, then Hammond recruited, after that, both Williams and Connors, whom federal officials say both knew of the payments to get the bill passed. Based on these events, the indictment charges all three defendants with conspiracy to commit bribery related to federal programs, conspiracy to commit honest services wire fraud, and honest services wire fraud. So, additionally, the indictment alleges that Gilbert and Connors committed the substantive offense of bribery related to federal programs. Hammond, who was not named as a defendant in the indictment, pleaded guilty to mail fraud last year. If only they had been frog-marched.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Okay, finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays is an article out of Think Progress by Rebecca Entralgo. 10 mayors from South Florida City sued the state yesterday, seeking the authority to regulate firearms on the municipal level without facing fines or losing their position in elected office. Which begs another question. Wouldn't this be a travesty? Can you imagine a Democratic majority imposing the penalty of losing your elected position and a $5,000 or plus fine for not towing the line the way we want you to? Maybe we ought to try that. A 2011 state statute penalizes local elected officials who try to enact their own gun control laws with a $5,000 fine and the threat of being removed from office. Well, it was in Florida where the gun lobby first floated their test case to keep the CDC and other organizations from being able to track gun deaths, etc., etc. Okay, a recent New Yorker story on Marion Hammer, the National Rifle Association's formidable Florida lobbyist, describes how in the days after the shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland had claimed the lives of 17 students and faculty, a Democratic member of the Florida House of Representatives who represents a neighboring district, Jared Moskowitz, spoke with a Coral Springs City Commissioner named Dan Daly. According to Daly, a Marjorie Stoneman Douglas student told him simply to do something about gun control. Daly had to tell the student survivor that legally he was barred from doing anything or he would lose his job. That's the legacy of Marion Hammer, Moskowitz told the New Yorker. So mayors from Cutler Bay, Lauderhill, Miami Beach, Miami Gardens, Miramar, the village of Pinecrest, Weston, Pompano Beach, and South Miami want to change that. They are in the process of suing Governor Rick Scott, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and other state officials alleging the statute is invalid and unconstitutional. And I got to tell you, my middle name is Justice, and I have it on proper authority to let you know it is unconstitutional. Okay, so there was also at least one other similar lawsuit led by the city of Coral Springs in the works. The threat of removal is cited in the suit brought by the city of Weston and 9 South Florida cities. Shortly after the Parkland shooting, the city of Coral Gables attempted to become the first city in Florida to enact a citywide ban on assault rifles. The city commission voted unanimously to draft a ban on the sales of military-style rifles, but the threat of fines and lawsuits weighed too heavily, and the proposed ban failed. This is very frustrating because we'd like to do something about this, said Coral Gables Commissioner Michael Mina. Whether we like it or not, there is a state statute that prevents us from doing that. Okay, well, just a few weeks ago, Scott defied the NRA and signed a suite of new firearms restrictions into law. The new law raises the minimum age to purchase a firearm to 21, extends the waiting period to 3 days for the purchase of all firearms. It also gives law enforcement more power to seize weapons and prohibits the sale of bump stocks, devices that can be put on a semi-automatic weapon to increase the rate of fire. We all know about that. And what about silencers? You know, the reason you need a silencer is because when there's a mass killing, you really don't want to traumatize the little kids who are just trying to get into the game. Well, Florida's powerful gun lobby is not backing down. The NRA sued the state of Florida shortly after the bill was signed into law. The lawsuit alleges the bill violates the constitutional rights of 18 to 21-year-olds to kill innocent 18 to 21-year-olds. Okay. Well, that's a little bit of embellishment in this reporter's opinion, of course. All right. Well, I'm still in a little bit of a discussion because I figure that if somebody tells you that a good guy can stop a bad guy, a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun, that person is probably trying to sell you 2 guns. And I've been in a bit of an argument about what constitutes a military-type rifle, because an AR-15 is only a semi-automatic, so therefore it's not military. We're down to that again, aren't we? They are people killers. And there's no place for a people killer on the streets of America. Call me a romantic. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but we'll be back here tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, as well we should. Stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day for breaking news. If Mueller gets fired, we'll break in, and Netroots Radio and Daily Co's radio personalities will be breaking it down for you. So stay tuned for the rest of the day, and we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coët. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.